we thought we'd go out to our fellow Chinese community and ask them where they thought the best and worst place to be Chinese in the UK is.
Exactly. So you don't want everyone in your business, because the community can be quite like that. People knowing what other people are up to, etc. So it's nice to have that distance away from the community a little bit.
The barometer of if a place is good for Chinese people: bubble tea and casinos.
Yeah. Blackpool is also on the shit list apparently. So was there anything specific?
Yes, there were so many B&O families. One school had an extra 150 B&O children start in the school. Kev, where do you feel is the best place in the whole of the UK to live as a Chinese person or a BBC person? Whereabouts are you now?
I live in Newcastle.
Is Newcastle a good place to be a Chinese person?
I am biased. I do like Newcastle a lot. I lived here for 7 or 8 years now. And I like it a lot. My wife, although not a native Geordie, was born in Hong Kong and moved over here when she was 8 and has lived in Newcastle. Apart from our brief time, about a year in Manchester, we've lived predominantly in Newcastle. And I love it. We've got the city, the beach, lush countryside, Chinatown. And I think for Chinese people, it is a great place to live. We've got loads of decent restaurants, bubble tea shops, casinos for those that like to gamble.
The barometer of if a place is good for Chinese people: bubble tea and casinos.
I think those two are up there for sure.
So I'm in Manchester, as you know, and we have a Chinatown. We have all manners of bubble tea. We've got lots of casinos, as many people will know, that's both good and bad. But this episode, we thought we'd go out to our fellow Chinese community and ask them where they thought the best and worst place to be Chinese in the UK is. Should we go into the comments, Kev?
There was some real spicy stuff in here, wasn't there?
Oh, yeah. I think there's no avoiding the clash between the two major cities of the North and the UK when it comes to Chinatowns. You've got London, which is the obvious choice, versus Manchester, which has got, I'm going to be a bit biased, but I'm going to try and keep a neutral view on this. But London is the obvious choice for a lot of BBC and Chinese people because I guess the level of diversity London has, right? It's the capital after all.
Let's start with the obvious battle. London versus Manchester for Chinese people. Where is better to live? I've lived in both places. I've lived in London and Manchester. I like both, so I'm going to sit on the fence a little bit. For balance, what I will say is London's got the biggest community, the flagship Chinatown, the most eateries, indie restaurants, casinos. It's got the most bubble tea shops. It's got the most dessert places. So you kind of think, actually, and also it's got the best wages, right, for people that are moving there.
So you're going to attract a better salary if you work in a similar job in London versus the North.
Yeah, agreed. However, London, crime. You stand out with your phone for 2 seconds, someone's going to take it out of your hand and they're going to be
I've seen it. I've seen the videos. I've seen the videos where, these guys in ski masks on bikes just go and snatch. I mean, you can spot them a mile away, so I don't know why people still hold their phones out.
Yeah, but for an unsuspecting, let's say someone's new to the UK, let's say our B&O brothers and sisters, right? They move here, they think, London, nice place to live. If you can afford a place there, you're talking 400 grand for a 2-bed flat in zone 6. Yeah. So out of the two places, I think Manchester edges it.
Yeah.
Because it's a cheaper place to live. It's got all the things that are good about London, but in a smaller place. Yeah. It's a safer city, debatable. It's a safer city, verbatim, I think. So, yeah, I think Manchester might edge it. I don't know what you think.
And I'm going to try and keep a neutral head about this. Now, London is the obvious choice. I have a lot of clients in London with remote working. I've got staff in London as well who work remotely as well. Although we're based in Manchester, our office is based in Manchester. London's the obvious choice because the big brand name chains will always go to London first.
That's right.
You've got London Chinatown. In fact, I think there's one outside, which is like the unofficial Chinatown in London, which is good. It's got a big diverse community. It's not just Chinese. You've got Vietnamese and you've got Korean, you've got Japanese.
Yes.
Manchester has the same. On a much smaller scale, we have a Chinatown, K rooms, K bars. We've got all the sort of authentic restaurants. We've got all the bubble tea. We've got a Haiti here now.
Yes, I've
In
been to that Haiti. It's good.
We've got Haiti in Manchester now, and we've got a lot. But like you said, Manchester property prices are much lower than in London.
Yeah. I think we should call out some of the independent restaurants and places to eat in London as well. Hoko, really good. It's a Hong Kong Chan style place. Hoi Dai Lo as well. There's loads of Korean restaurants. There's Meat Fresh. That's quite a good place for dessert as well. So there's some decent places to eat, I would say. But Manchester, Waka Waka is good. Haiti's good as well. There's a new dessert place called Joy Sweet or something like that in Manchester that does all the Cantonese style desserts and things.
Yes.
When it comes to those things, it's quite hard to balance the two because there are very good places in both Manchester and London.
I'll let people watching vote for whether it's London and Manchester. I'm going to vote for Manchester.
Yeah, me too. I think I'm going to side with Manchester for now, but we'll let all the Londoners come at us. Say why London is better than Manchester.
Not only were London and Manchester mentioned, but we had over 20 different towns and cities mentioned.
Wow.
Like people were passionate about their own town or city, sometimes positive and sometimes absolutely negative. Yeah. As an example, someone, now this is not me saying this, said that Sheffield was a very shit place to be
Yeah,
for a
I don't
Chinese
think
person. Now, I'm from Sheffield originally.
I didn't know that. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
all right.
from Sheffield originally. Kept quiet about that.
You didn't say anything about that.
No, I didn't
especially
say
when-
anything.
Yeah, we were discussing it. Is it
No,
something you're ashamed of? You know?
No, I'm originally from Sheffield as a
Right.
kid, and then I moved to Manchester for uni, and then I went to London for a while, and then I moved back up and stayed in Manchester. Here are some of the worst places that some of the people in the BBC Chinese group said that were terrible places to live as a Chinese person. Let's name a couple.
Sheffield was there right at the
Sheffield
top.
was Sheffield was there.
I mean, it got called out as shit.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
to be fair, Sheffield doesn't have a Chinatown. It's got
No.
it's got a road called London Road, which is quite a few Chinese places on it. It's the unofficial place for Chinese food. Is it shit? I don't think it's shit, but could it be better? I think it could be a lot better. He's got a great Chinese student population, which is probably why a lot of these new Chinese eateries are there. And actually, it's got a relatively decent B&O population that have moved there as well. So it can't be that shit.
I'll tell you what, that is actually a really good point. Before we get stuck into that whole worst place to live, the flourish of Chinese eateries and places to visit is kind of brought on by two things, isn't it? Chinese students and the recent amount of B&Os that have moved over. So we've kind of seen wherever the Chinese students go and wherever B&Os populate, we've seen the amount of places to visit for Chinese people that are catered for Chinese people suddenly grow. I think it's a good thing, right?
I think, no, it's definitely, it's
Yeah.
a great, and also because the tastes are sometimes different. You know, if you open something for BBC Western type style tastes,
Yeah.
it's just going to be the same stuff, right? It's just going to, because a lot of the Chinese students or Vietnamese students or Korean students or Japanese or whoever, they're bringing over this demand for taste of home.
Absolutely.
So therefore, all these eateries open. So it's a good thing. It's a good thing. But yeah, I don't think Sheffield, it could be better, is what I'll say.
All right. So let's say that Sheffield's made it onto the bad list, right? So yeah, this isn't according to us. This is just from what the group's been saying.
Yeah.
Sheffield, Blackpool is also on the shit list apparently. So was there anything specific said about Blackpool?
So this member of our community had a lot to say about Blackpool.
Let's find it. Worst, Blackpool. Very few Chinese Southeast Asian people. Pretty racist. High crime rate. High violence. One bubble tea shop, and that's bad.
Are we literally measuring how worthy Chinese people are based on the bubble tea shops?
I reckon happiness of Chinese people and number of bubble tea shops correlates. Like no Chinese students because no university. Chinese students, more eateries, etc. Barely a Chinese tourist ever. It's the northern Las Vegas. Why wouldn't Chinese people go to Blackpool?
I think you're clutching at straws there, mate, with the northern Las Vegas.
No Chinatown, no dim sum, no diversity, smells bad, one Chinese supermarket, and the selection is fairly limited. Two casinos, but never Chinese people, only local drug dealers. It sounds like the worst place to live ever.
This sounds horrific for anyone, let alone just Chinese people.
I know, mate. It just sounds like a horrible place to live. The only Southeast Asian people I ever meet in Blackpool are takeaway and restaurant owners and small business owners, and the staff are always white due to the lack of diversity. I mean,
Oh,
that's
bad.
something,
That is
isn't
bad.
it?
Added here. Also, little to no education level and low quality of life. Shopping sucks. Food sucks. It's the opposite of where this person grew up, which ticked everything. That sounds horrific. Are you from Blackpool? Are we being unfair? Is this person being unfair? Is Blackpool really that bad, or are they just seeing a really one-sided part of this?
I would love to hear someone stick up for Blackpool because it's took an
Yeah, me too. Me too.
took an absolute bashing there, hasn't it? It's on its
Yeah,
knees.
it really has.
Someone help Blackpool, please. Send help.
Blackpool seems to be like. I mean, that sounds bad, that isn't it?
Yeah, that's going to take some topping, but let's try and see where other places that are supposed to be bad have been named.
All right, next one on the list for bad place to live if you're Chinese, Swindon.
What did they
No,
say about
I
Swindon?
don't even know where Swindon is.
No, I
Down, is
don't.
that,
I've never been there. Had
let's
no
have a quick
clients or work there.
before we get and move on. Let's have a look at where Swindon is. It's a town in England near Wiltshire, which is down south.
Okay, this is how bad
Uh,
my geography is. I don't even know where
yeah,
Wiltshire
so
is.
it's between Oxford and Bath, where you
Okay,
are.
well,
Yeah,
Oxford and Bath
yeah,
is
yeah.
both lovely places. It's probably just that in between bit that isn't so nice,
In
right?
between. Everyone went to Oxford or Bath. No one
Yeah,
stayed in Swindon. So
absolutely not.
basically, this person said Swindon is absolutely shit. Most our shops are closed down. We have lots of coffee shops, plenty of vape shops, which I think the vape shop is the signal, isn't it? If you
Yeah.
live on a street or live near a street where it's just full of
Yes.
vape shops, I think that's the signal that it's a dying town.
I've never actually thought about
The
that.
vape shop.
Yeah, if you have less bubble tea shops but more vape shops, it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
That's the marker of a shit place, isn't
Yeah.
it, really?
Only one bubble tea shop and two Poundlands. And two Poundlands and a pound stretcher as well.
Wow. So there's £3 shops effectively. And then it says,
Only one bubble tea shop and plenty of vape shops.
surprisingly, that same person has said there's a lot of B&Os come over.
That's odd. I'll be honest with you. Whoever organised that B&O party that said, "Hey, come over here. We'll organise everything for you: housing, schooling, everything in a wonderful place called Swindon." Yeah, they got conned.
Do you know what they said? At least it's not Blackpool. That's what they
Yeah,
said.
that's true. That's exactly what it is. Swindon made the list. Now, we have one more that made the shit list, according to our fellow BBC Chinese community.
Don't come for our heads.
Don't
Don't
come
come
for
for our
us.
heads. This isn't us. Yeah.
Next is Southampton.
Southampton. What do you know about Southampton? I know it's got a football
I've only
team.
been to Southampton once, and that
Mhm.
was just staying overnight on the way to Legoland.
Thoughts?
Well, that's where the ships are, isn't it? That's where you board a lot of the ferries, right?
Yeah, it's a port town, isn't
It's a
it?
town,
Yeah.
exactly. But this person here said that there was a bit of racism in Southampton.
Okay.
So, and what else did they say? Let's have a look. They said, it's a quiet port town with a surprising amount of racism, and youngsters are dicks. I mean, I think you get youngsters are dicks everywhere, to be fair. But
Yeah.
all the
You sounded like an old man there, mate. Youngsters are
yeah,
dicks
all
everywhere.
youngsters, all youngsters, the dicks.
Yeah.
All the Chinese people seem to know each other, unlike Manchester, where there's people from all sorts of backgrounds. But they said that people generally are okay and yet to have a bad interaction. And actually, there has been an influx of Tantangs because, again, an influx of B&O communities. So, well, God, it's like they're far-reaching, aren't they?
I think they're Yeah.
everywhere. They're bringing the bubble tea and the tatantangs to a shit town near you.
It's gentrification BNO style, isn't it?
That's the shit towns. Now, whilst we are on the topic of the BNO population bringing in the demand for tatantangs and bubble teas and whatnot, there must be some more bigger hotspots for where the B&O community reside. Now, obviously, we in Manchester, quite obviously, there's going to be, a lot of the B&O community. What are the kind of hotspots have people said in our sort of chats that people have said that there's a good concentration of B&O population?
Well, let's before we get stuck into that, what's your own experience of B&O so far? Because our just across the road from me, actually, on our street, there's a B&O family. The little boy there is in the same class as my youngest as well. Lovely people, really nice, and yeah, and actually, there's been quite a lot of B&O in the school. So I would say there's probably 7 or 8 different
Really?
families
Oh
in the
wow.
school.
Yeah, I
In
think in Jamie's school, there's probably been about 5 or 6. In Natasha's school, it's in high school. There's a lot more Chinese anyway,
yeah,
because of the type of school she's in. But yeah, she's but in terms of noticing BNO communities, I do feel that BNO families come over to the UK that they do try and stick with other BNO families.
yeah, me too.
Which
Yeah,
you want to be with your own, right?
yeah,
Um, and so what you end up getting is huge sort of groups of and pockets of B&O communities sticking together and building kind of like their own sub community within a community. Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, my experience is that they stick together, and actually there are good things to say because it means they brought a lot of demand for, it's almost like bringing a piece of Hong Kong over to Manchester or to
yeah. I
Newcastle.
quite like it.
Whatever. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're bringing that. There's obviously other challenges when you mass migrate a lot of people from one place to another. I do feel one of our friends within the chat also said that whilst a lot of BNO families came over to find that UK was great, a lot of them were disappointed, and I can understand why. The shit,
yeah. That was my first point. Weather's
yeah,
awful here compared
the
to Hong
weather's
Kong.
the
Yeah.
weather's shit. Taxes are high. Um, our energy prices are high. Everything's high.
Most towns have an element, regardless if you're in Cambridge, which is a really nice town, or Blackpool, there's always that element of chav behaviour, the unruly youth, as we like to call them. So, yeah, there's definitely that element of the UK, which probably doesn't exist as much in Hong Kong.
There are particular pockets that people have recognised where someone called this area the English version of Satin.
Yes. Was that Sutton? Or was it
No,
something else?
that was Warrington, which is near
Ah,
me in
yeah.
Manchester. So Warrington, they said, was like Satin, where actually there were so many B&O families that actually there was one school had an extra 150 B&O children start in the school.
Wow.
That's man.
What most schools have, what, 600 students in it? So that's
Well,
a
I don't know if this was a primary or a secondary. If it's secondary, it's a bit higher, but obviously, if it's
yeah.
can't be a primary, that'd be the
No.
whole school.
We'll let's assume that 25% of the school. At most, it's going to be 50% or more. I mean, that's pretty crazy, isn't it, to integrate that many kids? She did
Crazy.
mention it came with some integration issues where the kids would segregate themselves and not mix with
Exactly.
non-BNO kids, which is kind of what you would, if you could say what was the likely scenario, that's definitely the more likely scenario. Some of the teachers were overhearing certain phrases, right, and then asking other mums, what does that mean? So imagine they're going home and going, I've heard the kids say quite a lot of this phrase. What's the phrase? Oh, diwle no mo. And they're like, oh, right, what, yeah, what does diwle no mo mean? And we're like, oh, well, that means politely,
Yeah,
fuck your
yeah, yeah,
mother.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
there's going to be a lot of that where they're just learning the behaviors and the language between them because there will be this natural separation away from anyone else that's non-BNO. So I think that it does come with its issues if there's too many in one school.
In another area near me in Manchester, called Sale, which is quite an affluent part of Manchester. In Sale, there were stories that, again, similar story where they opened up 2 extra classes in one of the schools just to accommodate the number of BNO families that had moved into the area. That's
Wow.
mad, crazy.
It
That is
is.
like that's the big migration.
I've spoke to the guy opposite me and said, "What's the draw about England?" And he said, "House prices cheaper. Obviously, they come over with once they've sold their property over there, they may have made a pretty penny on the house that they've sold. Come over here, move to the north, bought a house for 300 grand, still got a lot of money in their pocket. Kids
Yeah.
have less pressure at school. It's a better way of life, less pressurized. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of draws. But like you said, it's not always the grass is greener. They come over, the weather's not as nice, and people aren't maybe as nice as what they are in Hong Kong, etc. So there's a lot of negatives and positives to the situation, I feel.
Another place, now I don't know where this is. People listening to this might point this out. Sutton has been described as Little Hong Kong.
I'm going to have a quick look at it.
Well,
Where's
it's down south near London. Now,
okay?
I sound like a twat there because I bet it's nowhere near London
London?
because
No, it's a London borough. It's a London
it's a
borough of
London borough,
Sutton.
right?
Yeah.
I'm not a twat.
So
So yeah,
it looks nice.
yeah, it looks nice. Very
Google,
leafy. Looks very leafy.
yeah,
Yeah,
Google showed me a lot of idyllic pubs and lovely greenery, lots of parks and things. It looks nice,
yeah,
definitely.
and apparently it's people are moving there because of the schools, which is
Right.
obvious. It's the same situation with Altrincham. There's a big concentration of good schools there, so that's why people move there. The BNO hotspots are there any more?
Warrington, Sutton,
Sutton,
yeah,
Sale, Altrincham.
Altrincham.
Those are the ones that people have said. I'm sure there are many more. If you're listening to this, give us some more BNO hotspots and
Yeah, we'd like to know
see how
about that
many.
and how they've changed the area. Because I know in Sale and Altrincham, actually, don't they have Hong Kongers FC football team? Have you heard
I
that?
have heard that.
They're playing against English teams, etc. And I was watching a YouTube video about it. It looks quite cool, actually. And there's a market on a Sunday as well, specifically put
Yes,
on
there is.
by
Yeah,
BNO.
there
So
is.
yeah,
There's one in they do a there's a big one in Bury Market
right.
where the first one was a bit disorganized, but I think the ones after that were really well organized. People were bringing their own specialities and delicacies, so that was good. But yeah, generally they are pockets of communities that have stuck together and actually taken over an area.
Taking over's quite a big phrase, isn't it? But
It
like,
is a big phrase.
yeah,
It's in some places. It's practically what happened. It's
yeah.
almost, dare I say, the Hong Kong are invading the British. It's like reverse engineered. It's like, do you like a bit of this medicine, Brits?
Yeah. Are you saying the colonized are becoming the colonizers now?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Don't come
reverse
for us.
colon. Yeah.
It's a joke. Don't come for us.
So, on that topic where communities are forming together, presumably, Kev, you live in an area that's a mixture. Like you said, there is a BBC family across the
Yeah.
road, but generally speaking, there are families from other cultures and
Mhm.
other races, which is nice. I like that as well. They're ethnically diverse, lots of
Yeah.
different cultures together, understanding, living together side by side. That's the case for you?
Yeah, I really like it. Not only does it open our eyes to a lot of different cultures and experiences, it opens a lot of experiences for us, places for us to eat and try different food,
Yeah.
etc. You foster a more accepting place that isn't just for one certain type of person or a certain type of people. Having an element of difference and variation amongst the community is great. I can't advocate for it enough.
Yeah, I agree. The area that I live in is exactly the same. Lots of different ethnic backgrounds. We've had a couple of families in the area as well, and it's good. But would you want to live in a place where it's literally just Chinese?
No.
Why not?
So we have in Newcastle, we have a couple of places that are quite populous for Chinese people. My wife grew up here. She knows quite a lot of places that have that particular element. When we moved here, we actually purposely said we hope there's not too many people that we know because you come home late, people are like, oh, came home at 3 a.m. last night and he was being loud and pissed. Not that that happens a lot.
People talk,
Yes,
right? Yeah.
Exactly. So you don't want everyone in your business, because the community can be quite like that. People knowing what other people are up to, etc. So it's nice to have that distance away from the community a little bit. And I feel like if you are within the community too much, everyone's in each other's business. I quite like having a little bit of separation, which goes back to what we were saying when we grew up, where we grew up. Having a lot of Chinese people, not only does it mean that you lack variation in your viewpoints and what you see and what your kids see, but also it means that your business becomes other people's business. I think it's
Yeah,
not for me.
I agree with that. Also, there was a time, maybe it's because of our backgrounds, Kev. Growing up, I was a BBC, I was born here. Mum and dad had a takeaway and then restaurants. And really, we didn't want to be in the same town as other Chinese families because of survival. We wanted to be in a place on our own because of market share, essentially.
Yeah,
And that's kind of how it was. Is it the same with you?
we moved to North Yorkshire effectively, and we were the only Chinese family within the town. The town had 4,000 people in it. Great place to grow up. I really liked my childhood, and I'm very fond of the place. My mum and dad still live there. There wasn't another takeaway for 8 miles, and 8 miles
Right.
meant, a lot of real estate, a lot of, opportunity for people to come to your business, because there wasn't another place to go. So yeah, that was why we moved there. So yeah, what did that mean? It meant that I wasn't exposed to another Chinese person until I was 17, 18 as a friend.
Wow.
So my first Chinese friend was at uni. And before that, yeah.
I think you're right. I think did have Chinese friends, but not ones that were my friends on my own. As in, I had Chinese friends that it were basically they were kids of my dad's friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but not my own friends that I'd met.
I knew
Yeah,
people through my dad who then also
yeah,
had kids of a similar age. But the first friend that I made that was Chinese that wasn't one of my dad's friends was at uni. So yeah.
yeah. Same here. So what's changed now? What you do get, and we've talked about BNO hotspots now, but you are starting to get these pockets of Chinese people that are together, living together, working together, and all that. Like, what's changed? Because that wasn't how it was when we grew up.
You've already mentioned that our parents decided on places to live by looking for places to open a business and not
Yeah,
being close to another person that was opening a business. They don't have to do that anymore. They don't have
no,
to open a
different
restaurant and a
professions,
takeaway.
people in
Yeah,
professions now.
that's right. They're in office
Yeah.
jobs that don't require them to open a business that needs footfall. So yeah, and that's why I think so they can band together and not feel like they're a
Mm.
threat to each other. I think that's a very
Would you
simple.
would you want to live in if your entire street was just Chinese people?
No,
How would it make you feel?
I would feel like my viewpoints and experience of the world was being narrowed by the people around me, because we weren't exposed to different ways of thinking, different cultures, different foods, all that sort of stuff. It would probably make a lot of people a bit more narrow minded. I think diversification is, and multicultural society, a lot of people will disagree, but I think it works well, and we're probably some good examples of how it can work well, right?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. So I think we've covered a lot here, but to give everyone some airtime, let's read out some comments, some of the other cities that were mentioned. So I've got one here. I'll start. Um, Someone here lives in the Highlands of Inverness, yeah, which
Yeah,
is like the north of the north, right?
yeah,
There's no Chinatown, no casinos, no Chinese restaurant.
I
Gosh,
know.
that is isolated, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they said it's a very nice city to live, and there's less than 200 Chinese locals. They said that we know each other, even we fart, we can smell it.
Yeah, that's what I
That's
don't
good.
want. I don't want. Imagine like getting a waft and going,
That's
that's Stephen Lewis,
that's
that part.
in
I can
it.
tell.
A wing from here.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. No, but yeah, I mean that's way too isolated for me. Some people might like it. Some people would, relish being out in the sticks and having a really idyllic, lovely place to live, and that's quite remote. But I couldn't do it. I quite like living close to a city, close to the beach, close to the countryside as well, and being within 10 minutes of each. I think that's why Newcastle works for me.
Yeah.
But There's a place here that's been mentioned that might be a little bit of a, I wouldn't say dark horse, but it's certainly not a big city, Cambridge. So Cambridge
Yes.
got mentioned a few times. Now, when you think of Cambridge, what do you think of?
Cambridge University, ancient monuments steeped in history, a river.
Yeah.
I don't think of bubble tea.
No, but you think
Did
it's
they
a nice.
did they say there's bubble tea?
They haven't mentioned the bubble tea, but if I was to think of ideal places to live in England, Cambridge would be on one of my lists just because you have this image of Cambridge, don't you, of being very civilized, very sophisticated, a lovely scenic place to live.
Yeah.
House prices, though, are really high over there.
And you'd expect it.
Yeah, but a lot of B&Os can afford it because of Hong Kong is the most
Yeah.
expensive property market in the world. If they sold their house over there, they can come over here and buy a
Yeah.
decent place in
Yeah.
Cambridge.
I think when people in Hong Kong came over on their BNO status, Cambridge is what they were expecting.
Yes. They
That's
weren't
it.
expecting
Yes.
Swindon, were they?
They weren't expecting Swinton, and they were
No.
definitely not expecting Blackpool.
Blackpool. No, no, no. I would feel
What
sorry
a
for the B&O.
shock that would have been.
Imagine.
Land in
Ima
Blackpool. Well, this isn't
Yeah,
Cambridge.
yeah, exactly. Now,
Yeah.
Cambridge, it's the ideal. It's got decent housing, it's got decent schools, there's been an increase in variety of cuisine from different regions of China, and you're not too far from green spaces and countryside, so it feels like a good
Sounds
mix.
good. I'd like to live in Cambridge.
The way our friend here has described it is very nice. And it's massively down to the university population. Again, Chinese students are driving that diversity of places to visit and businesses that have opened that are catering for Chinese people. Plenty of good schools, especially in the private sector. As expected, pockets of snobbiness. You'd expect it anyway from
Yeah,
Cambridge, I
I'll be
reckon.
honest. If you went to Cambridge and didn't get any snobbiness, are you really in Cambridge?
It's like when people mention York, isn't it? York is, you have
Yeah,
that idea that it's, and you would probably say York is the northern Cambridge. I reckon that's
possibly.
probably about
Yeah,
right.
Cambridge does sound idyllic,
Mm.
especially for people moving from Hong Kong to the UK. Any more? I think we've got here Glasgow. There is a
Yeah,
big Chinese community.
this is a good one. So let's say Glasgow versus Edinburgh for Chinese people. Now, I'm in Newcastle, so I'm fairly close to Edinburgh. And actually, those two communities are quite close to each other in Newcastle and Edinburgh. They know each other a lot. So we've got a lot of friends up in Edinburgh and vice versa. So, I mean, most recently, my trip to Hong Kong, we were going through Dibol. And then we bumped into a load of people from Edinburgh as well, which was really nice.
Oh,
It's
nice.
like Edinburgh has a really good Chinese community. It's got loads of decent restaurants. It's got a thriving Chinese student community as well. Over on that side, I've got Glaswegian cousins who grew up in East Kilbride. My personal view is that Glasgow isn't as upmarket as Edinburgh. At least it doesn't feel that
No,
way.
I think there's a stereotype there as well, right?
Yeah,
That's
for sure.
a long form stereotype. It probably is true to an extent, but maybe the gap is closing. Maybe you still get a lot of uh, affluent sort of Glaswegian areas.
Yeah, I don't know any, but I'm sure there is. So let's put it to the people of Glasgow, people of Edinburgh. Which is better for Chinese people? Help us answer that question.
I think we've covered a lot. So
Mm,
this is the best and worst place to live in the UK as a Chinese person. Some of these places sound absolutely idyllic, and some sound absolutely horrific.
what
Maybe
are we saying?
maybe we're being unfair, and maybe there are people who live in some of these horrific places that actually say, "Hey, you know what? You've got the wrong idea. Completely one-sided. This is the true story. Tell us about
Come to the defence. Blackpoolians, if that's what you're called if you live there, and
it." Yeah,
Swindonians, come to
yeah,
the defence of the places that you
yeah.
live. Or agree with what people have said. I know one thing's for certain. Me and you were looking on Rightmove and seeing if we could move to Cambridge as
Yeah,
soon as
yeah,
possible.
absolutely. We'll see you
Yeah.
there, Kev.
Yeah.
Good to speak to you again. I'll speak to you next week.
Yeah. See you next week.
See you later, dude.